All right, you guys, so let me drop our faces down. And I'm actually this morning going to start at the beginning of here. We're going to talk about our guide on form building and really use this guide as our guide for our conversation today to make sure we're covering all of the tools that are around form building in SAM and just the different categories that one form may have. There's several. We're trying to get this organized to make it easier to understand. So there are a couple of form categories when you start building forms. There's the form layout versus vertical or horizontal. How do you use a form? Are people going to be really looking at this form, looking for information, or are they actually doing data entry into the form? And then different form types, and that's what we'll start with. And then I'm going to jump from here over into the system to look at that so that we get clearer with clear examples on these really basic things as far as categories go to find some understanding. And I think I'll allow some conversation here. So if you have questions, definitely just raise your hand. I'll look for our faces and stuff if any of it becomes confusing so that we can get that clearer. So when I jump into SAM, our homepage is a form, but this is a static form that you guys don't really get to customize at this point. This page has, our reports and our checklist information and to quick search. But if I jump into a test record here, the very first form you guys ever encounter is the type of form is a cover page. This cover page is a view form and it has a vertical orientation. So vertical orientation meaning, let's see if I can annotate on here a little bit. Vertical meaning it's got these columns and the sections here, which I haven't introduced that term, stack up on top of each other. The form, let me see if I'm clear. So it's, the form is a view form because I'm really seeing information displayed on here. I am able to edit fields that are editable one at a time. So I can change the value, right? But it's not really a good type of form or usage of a form to have a view form and expect somebody to go in and do data entry on it. It would take a long time because there's at least 1, 2, 3 clicks just to complete the data entry on one data field. So it would take a long time. So that's the difference here. Again, this form orientation is a vertical, meaning the columns go down, the fields stack on top of each other. That is a vertical orientation. A horizontal orientation is going to look like a communications form, which should feel really familiar. And the fields are going to go across the screen in, which I clicked on this page before, but they're going to go across the screen horizontally. In this version of SAM, you can only have 5 fields across. We do that, put that boundary on these forms in order to allow when people are using this type of screen in mobile for it to condense better. In my experience, 5 fields is still a little bit too much. So there's some choices for us to make in development of a scroll bar across. It's not that easy to put in, so it's taken us a little bit of time to get back to that. So the other option in a lot of software systems is really to make your forms in a vertical orientation. But that can be difficult to look at when you're looking at a lot of information. So it's a choice in how you want to lay out a form. and how your team generally uses that form. But these are these are horizontal. And let me just make sure to be clear here as well. So this is a row. This also is a row. It's in a horizontal orientation. And again, one field here another field can be side by side. In this horizontal orientation, the fields are actually stacked. The field title is stacked above the field value that's in there, which we can see here, right? The field title and then the value of the field is here. This is also a view form, what we're looking at here. And it's really the intent here is not for your team to go in and edit all of these values one by one. Some of them really are values or fields that you're not allowed. You're not allowed to edit because they're just set in an uneditable way. Because there might be data that's calculated like entered by or entered date is the moment this record got entered. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the day that that communication actually happened. It's the moment in time this communication happened to be entered and who entered it by. Not necessarily, right? Like some agencies may have an office administrator who does all the data entry and they're doing it for somebody else. Sam is still going to record entered by as the person who physically typed this in, not necessarily the person who completed that task actually. So it really depends on how you run your database. But these are non-editable fields right here. And then again, we're really trying to focus on the forms. So it is the fact that they are horizontal across. These fields like this one here can be editable, but again, it's that same concept of this record is going to disappear if I choose this, or it's going to go down to the subform below. It just moved right here. Didn't get lost. It's just moved based on filters that are there to show in this other subform here. So before I move on to talking on more form types, does the group of us that's here understand a view versus an edit form? I would say I did not share what an edit form is. So an edit form is like this add form here where I'm going to be able to input maybe the note date, the communication date time, the session time, any fields that I want to be here. This is in a horizontal orientation, but this edit form I can tab through and I can, this is a horizontal orientation. It's set up with multiple rows. So let me drag my guy up here again. This is a row in the form building. This is a row. And then this is the third row. Okay, so this is a horizontal form. I'm entering one record at a time in this particular example of a form. And this form, when I build it, it has multiple rows. And I've told Sam where I want those fields to display, on what rows do I want them to be available. Let me clear these guys out and jump over here. And we'll look at one other like edit form. So I'm just going to go to the basic form up at the top, which edit form here. Actually, I really wanted I'll hide these guys, go back to annotate, and we clear all my drawings. This is an edit form in a vertical orientation. So again, 2 columns. It can be set up as 1 column. In this version of SAM, these sections, so 1 card or section at a time, will stack if the screen becomes really small. So if somebody was looking at this on a mobile or a tablet, they're going to feel like it's a single column because that's all you can see on a mobile device. Okay, but on a larger monitor, we've got more space and it can be set up as 2 columns. Let me see here. Are there any questions about just view and edit or horizontal versus vertical orientation? Like you wonder why you might use one versus the other or anything like that? No? Okay. All right, cool. Let me clear out my annotations. I think clear all my drawings. Okay, so other form types. We talked about the cover page. The cover page is always your landing page. So anytime you want to access a record, being a client, organization you work with, a person that works on your team and you want to see their record, this is the entry point for your records. You can have multiple cover pages. And in general, there's the case program field is the field that's used to determine what cover page SAM takes a user to based on what program. In the settings in Form Customizer, you can only choose one field per entity that the system will redirect to. You just can't have multiple variations beyond that. It's one field with a drop-down list and one value has to be set on that list. And so in this case, I think these are both domestic. So I'm going to change this case to be an international. I don't think it automatically changes. And of course, I'm not 100% if we can tell the difference. There we go. Okay, here we go. So now we're on the international, and in international, I've got the case program or the international case type are displayed here. But if I change back to the domestic, those fields don't relate to the domestic programs, so they are not available on here because SAM is actually moving between 2 different forms that are set as cover pages, one international and one domestic. This also, the entire form relates to it being the sidebar as well. So the sidebar goes along with your cover page. And so if you have an international program or you have a foster care program and it's different from your domestic placing program, you can have very different forms displayed so that users don't have to overlook fields that are not important to them, and they just get the information that is important to them there. Let me just see here. There are other form types. So next we'll talk about public forms. If there's no questions around a cover page, I'll probably get into more how to set up the cover page redirect, maybe a little later if we have that time in this call. Public forms are found under your forms. And there's 2 ways today, right now, to see them. I love this little drop down. The one thing that I don't love about this drop down is I'm seeing every form. So I'm seeing sub forms too. So I may not be seeing the primary forms that your team is going to actually give to a client. But all of these forms right here are set up as a public form. So I have a long list of forms to access, and all of these are links that I can click in and look at that specific form. There's also public form links on the sidebar. This is looking the same, like the same list to me, just off the bat. seeing both of these guys here, that these are subforms as well. It's just two views that are kind of slightly different. And in the coming months, we're going to be consolidating to a single view as easily as we can. So our goal on this link here, you've got a meatball menu where you can open the form or you can edit in Form Customizer, versus this here. If I'm looking at public forms, if I click this link, let me go to a real form. If I click this link and look at the Form Customizer view, my open options are over here right now today. And there's just, depending on how I set up this form, be it a view or an edit, and yeah, review or an edit, Sam is asking me, how do I want to, which way do I want to experience that form for when I open it up, is what's going on. So public forms, let's open this form up. Public forms are the forms that external users, so people who do not have access to your site through, let's call it the front door, they're coming in the back door, they need a different key that they can use. So people use public forms for their families, for sure. Absolutely, like application forms like the one that we're looking at are used. Families can also view a checklist, which is a type of a public form that can be accessed. The families can complete post-adoption reports online. They can enter in all of their references through different forms. It's really dependent on how you want to organize your forms. By default, Sam comes with public forms. It comes with, the application form for both a family and foster family. And the checklists, which then rely on checklists to be built in and assigned to that particular record for them to actually view that information. Let's see, other types of forms that people use that are public forms, basic inquiry forms. So you might have on your website contact us form. Some agencies have said any contact, they want one contact form on their site. They create a new entity type in SAM, call them inquiries, and it might be families or birth moms or somebody who wants to work with your organization, a board member that wants to be, or a prospective donor or a volunteer. It's a one-stop spot, and then they disperse the records into what appropriate spot they should have. Some agencies choose to have on their website an inquiry form for families and an inquiry form for birth moms, and then they direct donors and volunteers to other spots as well. So it's a choice for you guys to make as far as what is important with your connection, how you want to build out your own website. I see referral forms for children where county workers at the county use a form and refer children to a particular program, where then the staff at the agency that uses SAM gets that referral in. They have all the data that they need to make a decision if that child is, if they've got space or a family to match with that child. Donation forms are public forms. People have built application forms for prospective employees in SAM. We've built those kind of application forms. I think when there are times when I have jobs that are open and we allow people to enter their data in and tell us about themselves as well. Let's see what other forms. I think that's it. The only other thing for public forms I can think of is we talk about a family portal. And in my mind, a family portal, you could have lots of family portals. Then you could have a portal for a child if your organization serves youth who are getting older and can use a device. You could absolutely have a child or a youth log in and get to a landing page where information that you want to share with them can be relayed to them. You can build your own public forms that are a portal. They are just view forms, in my opinion, and how to set them up. Let me see if I jump back over here and go to forms and I go to public forms. We have a family portal, and I'll look at this where this form is set up as a view form. It's a public form and it's a view form. So unlike the forms inside that your team uses, when a public form is set as a view form, it literally is just displaying information for that user who's logged in. If it's a view form, the user must, or the end user must log in to see this form, because we're probably starting to display information that is confidential in nature. And should relate specifically to that human being that is logging in. What else do I want to say on that? Yeah, so view forms have a sidebar can be enabled for these public forms, where you can enable the sidebar, and your families, generally, I'm going to speak to families because that's generally people who are most interactive with a portal, could have a link to their checklist. They could have links to external forms for the state that you're working in. They could have forms that connect them to all of the adoptions so that they could fill out post-adoption reports, or for foster care agencies, they could fill out progress reports on placements, like a monthly progress report. These things can be built in. Some of that is built in by default. We'll never have your exacting specifications because the way you guys ask questions is unique to your agency. Okay. So that is public forms. Before I leave public forms, do y'all have any questions around just the idea of a public form, why we use that term portal, and any questions around public forms in general? Okay. Let me just make sure I'm covering things. Okay, so this all kind of goes together, is main container forms, subforms, and multi-record table forms. So let's see how to talk about that. I'm going to start with multi-record tables to describe it. A multi-record table allows you to collect a set of information for many records. So really easy to understand examples of that are communications. I've seen thousands of communications on client records, and every communication has the date, who entered it, what is this generally about, if it was an email, was there a subject line, what is the actual message of the body, right? So when we looked here, whatever fields you want to collect about a communication, every time you enter a new communication, these same fields are requested to be entered. And you can have one record, or you could have thousands of records. A lot of the tables that you interact with and a lot of the data that you guys track are multi-record tables. If I go down this sidebar, communications is, documents is, fees and expenses are, home studies, background checks, parent education, counseling records, adoption referrals, adoptions, post-adoption reports, complaints. All this is our testing and junk stuff. So the majority of these sidebar links are recording this kind of additional information. And there's gobs more on top of that, like previous marriages. Did you have one or two previous marriages? You need to enter in the spouse name. When do you get divorced with them? We need your divorce decree for each of those marriages. Those are just like examples of. So multi-record tables when we interact with them in a form setting, they generally have at least 3 forms to create a situation like what we're looking at right here with communications. So the main or container form, let me draw again, is really kind of this exterior box. It's the holding, it's your plate for holding this information in here. And then you have generally a horizontal what we call as an overview form, and it's set as a view form, and it is set to allow multiple records in a view format. So even this case notes, let me clear this out of here. This is going to let me. Yeah. This all communications is a little bit clearer because there literally are multiple records in here. Right? It's showing the record here. It's showing the record here. So we're seeing many records at a time. They're all view. And generally, these overview forms have a little bit of information that give you enough to track into, this is the record that I need to edit or learn more information about. There then are single record forms, which is how you add one of these records, one communication record at a time. And these single record forms can be set up as view and edit, either view only, edit only, or view and edit. And you get to link them to this overview form as an add form. It can be here. It is also allowed to be on the sidebar. And you can also edit by clicking the menu. You can edit one at a time, or you can access the details view. Some of the information that I've seen tracked over the years can get quite extensive. This view of a form is going to be very hard to see when we start looking at 10, 20 pieces of data all at one time. It's just kind of hard to navigate. You can see in the coloring here, but it will be so much information relayed that it's just overwhelming. So having a single record that we can look at and see a whole bunch of data about one record at a time is what's going on here. And so this is a form that is based off a multi-record table, but this is a single record form. And this one in this view that we're looking at right here is our view form of it. And then it looks like it's also set as view and edit because there's this edit link on the side where I can edit everything on this one communication record that is a field that is editable.
Stephanie, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So if a person edits the documentation, it's the person that is editing the document, right? Not anybody else that could edit that documentation, right?
The way you asked it, I feel like if I am in here and I click edit, Sam is going to record that I am modifying that record.
Okay. Because there was an issue that happened a month ago where a person got modified and the person's name wasn't in there, but somebody edited the document and no one was supposed to edit that document except the person that does the document. So
if a user has access if they have a view and edit, there may be nothing, permission type, there may be nothing that the system can do to stop them. So you may need to enhance your permission types to limit access to specific people.
Copy. Thank you.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's sounding like to me.
Mhm.
If it is a consistent problem, you might send a support ticket and we can look into or give some advice on how to better set up, because it sounds off the bat kind of like a permission issue, that maybe somebody should have viewed something and they should not be allowed to edit it, perhaps.
Yeah. When the person is doing the documentation, that person can edit it, but no second person can do that unless it's the administrator. Then they can do something, but no one else can do that. So
Okay, well, we may
that's
have
what,
to look at that, Gurmeet, separately and see what is possible to put limits on for those people.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me see. Okay, all right, so multi-record tables, I almost like wanna build, just go to a document and draft it out. It's, if, I think it feels more complicated than it really is. Let me see, I don't know that I have a guide quite yet, so let me clear this out. So if you have a multi-record table, you can have a multi-record form and you can have a single record form. Okay. To get a setup like this, you have a container form where it must sit. This is where any multi-record table, or any, excuse me, yeah, any multi-record form must be on a container form. And that container form can be created when you're building a form. It can also be that you are adding this multi-record form onto another form, which is going to be its container form. So let me show an example of this. Even this is an example, but let me pop back over here to, let's go to this review form. So where is one? I bet over here on this form. There we go. Okay. So this is our part 2 of the application form. It's a public form, and we're asking the family information about their previous marriages. So somebody may have 0 previous marriages, but if they have any, this form is going to ask them, how many do you have? If they say I have 2 previous marriages that I need to report on, this form is going to drop down 2 rows with all of these questions on them. But this previous marriages cannot sit by itself. It's just not a separate page. It just must be on, the rule is it must be on a container form. And so it can be on this greater form that we've got right here that's based on the case. It may be that we ask a question. How many marriages have you had? They put 2, we press save, and then the system drops out previous marriages based on their answer above. That is a possibility, but then previous marriages must sit on a container form in order to be shown. So let me actually say this is, these always are subforms. A multi-record form is always a subform. A single record form is not a subform, and it can stand alone. And it can stand alone without a container because why? I don't know. If I have a reason why, because it just can. It just can be set by itself. But a multi-record form must be on a container form. And I think this part is confusing. These two parts go together, and then single record forms are standalone that allow us to add one single record at a time. Do y'all want to ask any questions of that? Because I know that part is confusing a little bit. And perhaps let me also share. This is a long view of our, oh, it's not. I'm going to jump over to this form.
And actually, I have a clarifying question, maybe.
Yeah.
What defines a container form?
What defines a container form? It is the primary form that the form is on. Yeah, I don't know if there's a good answer for that. Generally, a container or a main form is based off the main entity or the case. If you're using a client entity type, like when I say an entity type, I'm talking about these big high-level tabs at the top that has a case. Generally, your container or your main form is going to be based on the case. Generally. Yeah, I don't know that I have I don't know if there is a exacting definition of it. It is a primary form that is based on the main entity or the case. And then again, it's sort of these record or forms that are built off of multi-record tables. If you want to collect multiple records at a time, they are automatically assigned as a subform. And because they're a subform, it means they're not the primary form. They are a part of a main or container form. We are absolutely going to clear up or choose a word for main or container. The site talks about it calls it two different things. In the coming months, we're going to wrap up to one title, and you'll see that throughout. Yeah, I don't know if that was helpful, Kelly. I mean, but
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
So I think the part that I really skipped here is that if you base a form, when you're building a form off a multi-record table, and you choose when you're building that form to set it that you're going to collect multiple records at one time, that is automatically a subform. And so it requires setting it, either you build it on the container form on the spot, or you know that you are putting that subform onto another form that already exists. And then a single form record form, where we're just adding one at a time, can be connected. For multi-record tables, if you want to build, like, let me see, I think all of my stuff has multiple subforms. If I go to adoptions, it should be just by itself. Okay, let me add an adoption record so we can just see one. And we match today and save, that's fine. Back, go to adoptions. Okay, so I see this one subform on here. That's all at least we can see right now on this particular page. If you want to build this where there is an add form, an edit form, edit and a details form, and this overview subform, when you're looking at a multi-record table, there is a option that'll put it all together. It's called multi-record standard form setup, and it builds 3 forms with connections between them all. It builds the container form for it to sit on. It builds the subform, which is what we're literally looking at right here. And it builds the add, edit, and details form, all as that single record type of form. And it makes the connection so you don't have to do that. There are millions of reasons why you may not want that exact setup. So, right, if I'm putting new information onto a service plan, or I'm putting new information onto an application form, I may just ask somebody, like Kelly and I were building a form yesterday for a service plan for somebody, and they're asking for medical diagnoses. For a child, that medical diagnosis is already on the child medical form. Let me jump over my favorite record. This kid, it's already on the child medical form that's on the sidebar, and users can see right here. Once this loads up, they'll be able to see diagnoses right here, right? So this is the sub form. We can add a new one. This is our one at a time. And then this is actually taking us back to the diagnoses here. If I go back to the medical form, I now have all 3. They're all listed right here. And it, I want to phrase this part. So, but yeah, okay. So this, the service plan that we were building, they want to see it not only on this form, they want to see it on this other form, but I don't need the whole setup, because when I go and edit that service plan, I'm going to say, ask them how many medical diagnoses does this child have? They have 3. And when you put in the number 3, all 3 things are going to open up. And so let me see if I can, having trouble getting him right into this form. Where do I want to go? I want to go to show you what that looks like, to be clear on the multi-record. We'll go to the public form, go to this view, edit, just let me write in, Sam. This is application forms, service plans, treatment plans are fairly complex form setups, because they involve a lot of tables and a lot of information. They take a little bit longer to load because it's pulling just a lot of stuff from different angles. Let me see, where is this? This is an example of what the multi-record edit form looks like. Is your user will select, I want to, and then they are provided. They don't get to enter one at a time. They have to enter both records that they selected before they can move on. Okay, so there's totally just a lot of reasons, and when you're building forms, why you might prefer this look and only this look. Public forms, these multi-record, this is, most public forms are going to be set up as an edit form for your families generally, where they can enter this information in. There are public forms that can be set as view, where they can add one at a time. But otherwise, your families are generally going to get a situation like this, where it's previous marriage, or how many people live in your home, or children that live outside of your home, etc. Just, you could have gobs of these, because there's a lot of information that your teams ask of families and your clients to get information about them. Let's see if this. We'll probably talk to this again and more examples. I'm going to run out of time of talking about just like the high level things about forms. Believe that's it. This guide is updated to, again, reflect what each of these look like, so that when you are toggling through your site, you can start to notice what's a vertical or a horizontal, or a view versus edit form, etc. as you move through. I do want to go over here and we'll look at form customizer. This guide has also been updated. And I'm trying to talk about form customizer and the tools that you see, which are primarily in the sidebar. So we'll go through those here. Start from the beginning is, when you go to settings screen, your forms can be found under this form widget here. You do have, some agency sites, there probably are thousands of forms built into SAM, or hundreds for sure. When you first get the site, some agencies have now thousands of field or forms in their site over years and years of just building different things as programs change and information gets reflected. There's so many. When you access this screen, you're going to need to know what you're looking for. Otherwise, this can feel overwhelming because there are a lot of forms that you interact with. I really like these filters to help narrow down. So when you're looking for very specific things, thankfully, SAM is built for adoption and foster care agencies. The terminology should feel similar to what you guys are working on. So if you're looking for matching information, right? We don't call it matching in here. It's called adoptive child preferences, but we've had people rename it, like if you're looking for something specific, you might want to pop down in here, because that is going to narrow down your visibility significantly by choosing the table. So being real, like if you're talking about home studies, looking at everything, there's a lot to look at. Parent education not going to help with that. It is a part of a home study, that's understood, but they're different forms and different kinds of information that you're looking for. So if you're looking to really narrow in, you want to click, use some of the filters. You can absolutely go by fields as well. There are lots. If there's a lot of forms, there's definitely that many more fields. So, if you know specifically what you're looking for, this is real helpful, right? We can find where this field is. It's literally only on this form and get there, that kind of a thing. But I don't find that I typically use that. I typically look because I know what somebody told me they're looking for. I'm either going to the table specifically, or I know I'm looking at a public form and I can guess based off that type of information. So again, I use that very frequently. Let's jump into any form and we'll talk about what is here. So our guide is laid out in order right now on what is in the sidebar, what you're seeing right there. I think I now will go in and add some more detail about describing this, but we'll talk about that here. So high level things are really this form properties. When you build a new form, you are setting up properties of that form. Is it view and edit? Is it public form? Because it's a multi-record, is it actually a sub form? And then there are lots of potential linkages that this will display. So this little accordion allows you to open and close it. If it were open all the time, it would be heavy lift of information that you're seeing. And it's not that important necessarily unless it is. I mean, it is important information, but it's hidden so that you aren't overlooking it all the time. This first bit tells you what table this is specifically based upon, and if it's a public form, and the usage of its view and or edit. Okay, and it's really based off the last table that's here. So it's trying to show you the hierarchy of table structure for this as well. Believe if I pop in and look at form, and let's say I look at a subform on adoption, I go to this form. Yeah, it does. It's still giving me the hierarchy up. And that's helpful because a table like adoption can be used up under the birth mom, or the birth father, or the child, or the family. Like, it can be shown so many places. The adoption table is copied and shared across those entities so that you can see that data on all those entity types, that it's important to see this is the adoption form coming from the family, not from the birth mom. This is not going to affect the birth mom in any way. It's not going to affect the child in any way. This is only affecting this particular form for underneath the family. And you can see here, and the other form that I was on was a public view and edit. This is set as a multi-record view only, and it automatically appends subform because it is that when it is a multi-record. Okay, so that part is important. There are lots of information displayed here, and it depends on the settings that you've chosen or have been chosen for you. If this form came, was established before your team got involved in editing forms, that will help you diagnose where this is and how to locate it. So in this case, here's the container form. If I go to the container form, this is telling me it's set as a sidebar link on all of these different cover pages. So I'll know where I can locate, and these are all links that I can toggle to again, find more information about this specific form. I feel like I saw here, some of these multi-record forms, believe there's going to be some additional settings displayed here. If you have filters on it, this one is the default number of records to show. So we've gotten in where people were frustrated this week about feeling like records are missing, when really the form is set up to only display a certain amount of records. And they didn't understand that setting. So certainly if we see things like that, we're probably going to extract that out because the users are misunderstanding that, rather than, it seems obvious to us, but sometimes it's not obvious where information may be displayed or not displayed. Let's see. So I want to talk through in that last 5 minutes, all these sidebar links. Biggest thing is editing the form layout, and this is going to allow you to move fields from into different rows or different columns or different sections, depending on how your form orientation is, whether it's vertical or horizontal. Where do I want to go? This guy, does this guy have sections and things that can be built on it? Let me jump over to one more form. Let me look at this application form again. Keep going back here. These boxes here are called sections. So when I click edit form layout, I can make sections. Again, if it's a vertical orientation, be 1 column or 2 columns. So I could change it into 2 columns by moving that over. And you get to really play with that. Again, this form on mobile will stack on top of each other. So it kind of depends on how your users interact with the system the most frequently. As to whether you want 1 or 2 columns. If you want a completely mobile friendly, everything is perfect, it's like put it in vertical forms. 1 column will make it real tight, and it'll organize it in a completely straight line. That is somewhat impractical for the amount of data that you guys look at. And so for sure, Sam is probably always going to be better on a nice big monitor, but that's not always practical either. So it does its own stacking, but there is a limit to how much it can stack in that horizontal layout. I think I've found 3 fields across really look about the best on a smaller screen, but we're allowing 5 so that it'll position well enough. So you can move them, you can move section 1, move down to section 2, etc. You get to decide how your sections are laid out. When you use that edit form layout, you get the delete. That's the only way you can delete, and we can just, it is a delete button. You're deleting this field from this form, not from your database with this move. Okay, it is not, the data is not going anywhere. You're just not collecting that information or displaying that information on this particular form. You do have a meatball menu on the section where if you go and edit the section, we might not want to call these people applicants, and maybe we want to call them a prospective parent or provider number 1. You do get a section hint where you can apply more information or go to help users enter this data, right? Just setting some expectations with folks of what you're looking to collect. You can put that information in there as well. And then the number drop down, if we wanted email number 1, we can move it up, things like that. That feels fairly self-explanatory to me, but I want to check in. Is there any confusion on that part right there? I'm going to skip add fields and talk about adding sections. You could add more sections. You'll title it, put any messaging that you want. That section, I think, is going to show up in column 2. I get to reset it. And then I don't have any fields in this section. So if I leave a section with no fields in it, that is not going to display in the real view of this. So I will need to move a field over to it, or I could add a new field. When you add a field, this is giving you a list of all of the tables that have been added to this form that I can use information from. So these are tables. You cannot pull in multi-record tables into this. That would have to be on a subform. But this is any table that is like family table, main entity, case table, or any, they're called one at a time tables, where it's like applicant 1 details or child medical info or a current record. If you had a table that was about adoptions and all you wanted to show was their most current adoption, you might have the current adoption table on here to show information there as well. These are clickable. I don't think in your sites right now you can just click anywhere. I think you have to go to the accordion to click it down, but coming up in a future version, anywhere in the header you can click on, you can pop in some data points and then scroll to the end or press Control Enter to save. And those fields will go into the last section. It's not necessarily this new section name, but that was the last section that I built. It's always going to go into the very bottom of your primary or your main or container form. Add sections we talked about. There is blocks. So one thing you may notice, like let's say, and I'm just going to roll over. I think I have a little bit of time. I assume folks will drop off and stuff if you are done, but we'll record for another 15 minutes or so to walk through these bits. If you what was I say? Oh, okay. So this is in 1 column at this point. Let's say I want to put it in 2 columns. So I'm just going to start stacking stuff. And you see, we've got some things that apply to the whole family. Let's put what? I don't know. Let's stick this in column 2. We're going to quickly get into a situation where our sections no longer align perfectly. And you may hate that. That's really up to you to just, if you do or don't like that look. You can enable form blocks. If you enable form blocks, it's going to give you another drop down in order to start setting sections a little bit more, so you have more formatting play when you start adding blocks. So I'm going to add this to block 2. And that was the pass. And I'm going to put this in block 2. The password, I think I put to block 2. And now I'll move this into, it's going to stay as in column 2. Okay. And let's put this in column or block 3. And we'll put this in block 3. So now when we look at it, because I've got this bit of information here, these still are never going to align. But if I removed this, edit this, get rid of this, I will have the ability where things will start to align a lot better. And this just makes the form prettier. So these don't align, and you may want to now make these all one column, right? I could literally go, you can transition from 2 columns to 1 column if you enable blocks into that. You can also disable form blocks. And I believe the whole system is going to wrap up and everything's in one spot. And so we'll show that here. Get rid of this. Do they all? They stay in, what was in 2 columns stays in 2 columns, but all the rest of them align up underneath the 1 column. And again, we're in that position where it may not look as good on the form. There are required fields when you open this, so you can set up required fields. The system will, you really are just putting in check marks if they're required, just in order to submit the form. In my experience, this needs some fine tuning as far as how many fields can be required before the user accessing this form and entering data into this form can feel stuck in it. You do have the ability to enter special requirements. You can click into the link here and you can set this special requirement when you've got 2 options. So this is like, this is only required if another field is not required. So the example is, I need a phone number or a cell phone number. We got to enter a phone number, or we have to have an email in here, but not everybody has a home phone anymore. So it may be that they feel more comfortable entering into the cell phone number and they don't want to duplicate that information. That's kind of choices, again, that you get. You also could set a field as required when a certain condition is met. So this is like, if I answered yes, I've had a criminal history, I need to give some details about that criminal history. If I put in that I have a first name in parent 2 information, I'm looking for that parent 2's last name. But I don't need it if I haven't put in first name. That kind of a thing is what we're seeing most frequently here. And then when you're done with this page, you need to save it in order for SAM to set in the fields that you've decided are required. There is your form properties under the accordion that we talked about. And there's also public form properties today, or it'll say form properties if it's not a public form. And in this setting, we can change it from having whatever your internal form name is really like administrative level. And then you might have a family facing or a user facing description. And it just eases the end user's understanding of the form. They don't really care if it's part 1 and we're asking for basic information. We're just saying, hey, welcome to our form. Let's go. Let's get this, do this. You can decide at this point, again, whether it's view and edit. It may change some of your settings. So it's really something that you probably want to decide when you're first building this form. For public forms, you get options to log in. So you can set where there's no login required. For the most part, public forms should have a login required, except for very beginning forms where you might be asking contact information, real simple forms. Otherwise, my recommendation, our team's recommendation is really to set a login required. The type of data that is stored in SAM is highly sensitive information, and the end user should really have a pause before they are actually just able to get in. And everybody in the world understands that there's a convenience that's left at that point in time, but the nature of the data that we have is such that it needs some extra check-ins before accessing the information. And then sometimes forms can be set to direct users somewhere after they submit. So we can, once the page is submitted, you get to choose whether you just want to show a message, and then you can say, you know, thank you for completing this. Or you might redirect them to your own website page that has a thank you, here's next steps, here's more information we want to provide. You might also redirect them to another form. So if you notice here, this is a drop down that gives you other public forms that have been built. And we're on part 1, and we've got this one set to take them to part 2. Part 2 will take them to part 3, etc. That you can set up. So as you build long forms that then you want to break up into smaller chunks to get little bits of information submitted at a time, this is how you would redirect to different forms. There is data entry on save. When the form is submitted, we can tell SAM what information we always want the system to record at the time of submission. So it really is dependent on the type of form that you have and where this form fits into your process. You might want to say, like in this case is setting, they're doing an application. We definitely consider this an active family. This part 1 does not have application receive date because the full application is not complete at that time. So that setting may be further down the line in the series of forms that makes up this greater form. But you may have date of submission for part 1. You may be setting that the case stage is application. You may know at this point that you're always assigning this application to a specific person, and you could set that as well. So there's all sorts of data entry that you could add, which is going to save your team lots of time in doing data entry. It's really the space for, you know, old school paper forms where they have a little box that everybody could see that says staff only. That's what this is. This is SAM taking care of data entry for your team. So your team doesn't have to go and set all of those data points. Then there is also email notification settings. I do believe we're going to start slowly pulling this away because you can do this through auto actions. But some people definitely have this set up. where you can enable it. Who are you going to email to? You're just putting in an email address, and then any templates that you have, you might want to say, yeah, the application is submitted by, and that's going to, office@adoptionagency.org. Wherever you want to email it to, it's a quick way to get it out. Because this can be done through an auto action, I think that's why we're going to end up trimming out some form customizer settings. And before we ever do that, we'll let you know. And then the last thing that I think is helpful is opening a random record, opening an edit versus a view form so that you can actually see this form. If I open a random record, this literally is choosing any record in our database. This database is full of sample data. It's all test whatever. And this is what this form currently looks like in its current setup. So this is giving us a view form of this data in this, because this form is set up as view and edit. I pop back, I believe because my settings are set up as login required, it's taking me, or maybe I have the option is right now. This is what it looks like in that edit state. And so I can see that information, and I could, I can certainly do a test run to make sure that the settings that we applied to it show forth. There's too many advanced options to go into on this call in this last 2 minutes. So I'm gonna call it done at this point. David or anybody that's in still, do y'all have any questions about what we've talked about?
I have a quick question that's adjacent to what we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
On a family portal, we only use it for PARs right now, but we're going to start using it for the people uploading their education certificates.
Okay.
So are we best having them log into the checklist, or would you make a portal landing page and then they have to click to it from there?
Mm-hmm. I think it's going to depend on what you ultimately want in any long term. So do you
Expand, you want a portal. If not,
wait one more time?
if we were to expand this to have them do other things, we would.
Yeah, because you can always change it. No, the links are, some wherever you start building this on, it's like, how are your families accessing it? If you, right, and I just am thinking through what administrative steps do you have to do if you're sending them templates that have this link. Do you want to change all those templates? Will you even remember all the templates that was located on? Or do you want to link this all the time to your website, where then you got one link, they're always going there? And you can change that website, the links that are presented on that website, but it's just one website link. You could, have a portal, a public form that is set as a view form, and you're putting the multi-record subform for parent education on there. We have it right now laid out on the checklist, because a lot of families a lot of our clients use the checklist. But if your team doesn't, I don't know that this would be the section that I would send them to.
That's actually what we have
I
right
don't
now.
have it here, but if I go and add, I can put it back on, and then maybe we can open a random record. So I'm doing two things at once right here. Let me get out of some of this other stuff. There we go. Leave it. This here is, do I have family portal, parent education? Perfect. I'm going to stick it on here. It's now down at the bottom. And, if I refresh this screen here, it's going to show up right here in parent education. So the checklist is a view form by default. And now I can only add one at a time. So you can't, for public forms, get view and edit kind of simultaneously. That's not available, but here they can then set out what did they do. Some information in here and press save. This should take us back to the checklist if it's still set up. No, it's taking us to a slightly different area of the form, but if I had set that parent education subform, it would take us back. So but you see my entry is here. If I start from here on so this is kind of a page where it's a view form. It could be your portal page where, again, you're just giving them case information and you don't have to give them home study, and it's just upload your parent trainings here, and they get to come in. If you push in a schedule for them, it may have the 10 items listed there, and then your family is going to pop in and edit and then upload their file.
Yeah, that's a little more elegant. Currently, I have it where it's the class number, then they upload their file. This gets into the name of the class and everything,
Mm-hmm.
which I currently have as an auto action that populates in their parent education once they upload their certificate.
Yeah, one thing that may happen is if you show on your edit form this title and topic, they do have the ability to change that, which I don't know how often people are doing that. That's not a complaint we regularly hear. So my assumption is people really aren't doing it, but that may feel concerning to you. I don't know. Right. So that would be the only thing. There is no way. I'm like, is there a way you might be able to have a template put up in this section that says the template would be based on parent education and it just has parent education title, and stick that there. And that may say, upload your education for adoption parenting book Q&A, and all you're giving them is the date completed and the certificate. Like, don't give them more fields than they should enter, I think is the deal.
Yeah.
My bet is that will work because you're clicking that very specific education record. And then if that template displays what that title is, I think you can do that.
Okay.
Kelly, let's you and me maybe play with that, because I'm almost positive you could do that in setting up a form. With that, let me close. Oops, stop sharing, but I just really want to